Welcome back to your Tuesday night Getting Defensive show here, presented by Gridiron Ratings. I am your host, Kraig, and with me as always, we have James and Gary. James, how are you doing this Tuesday night?
I'm doing well. Can't complain. I love my Tuesdays. Good to hang out with you guys and talk some IDP.
Gary, how's your Tuesday going besides all the cat hair floating around for you?
Yeah. I had a damn cat in here. Yeah, it's going great. I'm just happy to be here.
Yep, and make sure we have it on, and you guys seen this on YouTube for the most part. But if you're seeing this on Twitter, make sure you go over to the YouTube and subscribe. We are 4 followers away. I think it's 196, and once we hit that 400, we're going to be giving away one of the Gridiron Ratings Fantasy Football Playbooks. So make sure, if you're not already subscribed, to go over, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and hit the like button. That way you can get all the news and notes, whether it's IDP or the Dirty O, because there's some of that on the channel for you as well if you like that stuff.
Hey, we're so excited about getting ready to hit this next milestone. Look, folks, we're going to upgrade that from the playbook to an Iron Man subscription, which is like triple the value.
It's even better, yeah.
Right.
It's an insane value.
Yeah, we're not putting this out there, so just only if you guys hear this do you know that. Go hit subscribe, like, comment. We appreciate your support.
And little tips like that you can also find over on gridironratings.com in Gary, the IDP tipster's office. So make sure you are subscribed over there as well and checking out all the great articles that Gary, James, everyone else is putting out there, whether it's IDP content or other, that's full of information there as well. So make sure you're subscribed and paying attention to both each week. And speaking of paying attention, James' topic tonight is, did you listen to him last week? So you guys already know that, but James, what do you have to tell them if they were or were not paying attention?
Yeah, it's a rehash week. Sometimes we like to go to new topics as that's what's supposed to happen, but not always, because the buys are here. Last week we only had 4 weeks with those buys, and so I gave you that preemptive speech about how you need to get ready and prepare. Well, hopefully you did it, because this week it's a bloodbath out there. If you listen to this show, and hopefully you did, you heard me preach about planning ahead. You always want to plan ahead. And, if you didn't, you're going to have to use up some of that free agent budget. You're going to have to use up a waiver claim whether you want to or not, because this week everyone needs to go add someone, including you. So hopefully you already prepared and you looked at your schedule and said, I'm going to need a linebacker, or I'm going to need a DB, or I'm going to need an edge rusher, whatever it is. And you don't need to spend that waiver claim, because then next week you can have a very nice waiver claim. But maybe you didn't. That's okay. These aren't the worst things you can do. But also, you're trying to find an edge when you need to win in a league. And if you're in a league that's deep and has IDP, you've probably got some competent owners you're facing. So you need these edges. So plan ahead. Find out what you need to do and do it. I'll spare the full rant that we had last week and just say, if you don't plan ahead, you're probably the type of person who's going to lose. Don't be that person.
Yeah, and speaking of that planning ahead, we have 6 teams this week that are on bye. There's only 2 next week, but again, then you have 4 and 4. So the buys are coming. They're still going to be here through week 14, even though it is that longer season. There's a lot of buys, a lot of weeks you're going to have to be paying attention to. So look a week or 2 ahead if you have that roster space and the depth to be able to add guys.
Yeah, just think about this week. We got 16 going buys. We got all these guys. We got a couple of guys going that are injured. We have a lot of turmoil going on with players. Yeah, this is no time to drop the ball. Don't fumble this one. You're going to have to stay on it.
Good way to stay on it, too, we had mentioned over on gridironratings.com is Gary's info, and he does have the rolling waivers up there, too, to try to get an idea about people that are actually returning you value a couple weeks in a row that are being mentioned. Something that can be useful is sort of checking out that list, cross-referencing, who's available, who's not, looking at bye weeks. It's a really simple thing that most of us are doing already, but if you're not, or if you're new to IDP, pay attention to the guys that people are talking about. Even if you don't need them right now, have a little list. Keep track of it for the future. That way, if you get yourself in a pinch, you're not scrambling, having to do a whole bunch of research on a Monday or Tuesday night before those waiver claims come in. And if you have any sort of questions for us, IDP preferred, but we will, well, two of us will answer anything for you. Please feel free to drop them in the comments. The more detail that you have, the better. That way we can help you out the best that we can. Moving into sort of the news and notes here, injury-wise, Anthony Hitchens left, one of the starting linebackers, main guy getting snaps most of the season so far with a hyperextended elbow. Ben Neiman took over, and Willie Gay actually dropped in snaps from the prior week. They had been sort of supporting two linebackers with Bolton and Hitchens. Bolton's having a very nice season for a rookie for IDP purposes. Gary, has Ben Neiman the main one that you're looking at right now out of those two if Hitchens is going to be out, or are you hanging your hat on Bolton?
I'm avoiding the whole situation. I really don't think that I trust it. I just don't trust it. I don't care what the trend was for this first part of this season. The track record is just not there for me to go really paying attention. If it happens to work out with like Willie Gay or Bolton, whoever surfaces, then I'll accept it. But I want to see it first. I don't trust them.
And James, I know you were on the bandwagon of the Chiefs not being as good as everyone had thought they would be, and they've certainly shown that through the first, third of the season here. Do you have any thoughts on the linebacker situation for the Chiefs?
First off, I'm surprised that it's considered a bandwagon. I didn't see anybody else in the ride with me.
Well, but you could be riding the bandwagon by yourself and trying to people jump on. You got to have a driver.
Yeah, exactly. But certainly, I do think that, the Chiefs are kind of getting exposed. And while getting exposed is not what anyone in Kansas City wants to see, and certainly no one on my Twitter timeline wants to see it, I do think that there could be some value from a fantasy perspective here with these linebackers. Willie Gay is not the direction that I'm going to lean. That snap percentage hasn't been where I want to see it. He didn't play the first 4 weeks, which, take that with whatever grain of salt you want to take it, but he's not seeing an uptick. He went down from last week to this week. So, let me see what they do with Nick Bolton. He's produced fairly well while on the field. And, if that offense does get rolling, which I do think is very, very possible, he could see, plenty of opportunities on short checkdowns and just racking up and eating tackles. And I think that that's, kind of what you're looking for, going forward through the bye weeks. You want to have somebody who you like their floor, and I don't think Bolton's floor is that bad. Again, kind of what Gary said, I will echo it somewhat in that I don't want to be adding either of these guys, but if I am going to add someone, I'm going to add Bolton, and I don't hate the idea of doing it, but I'm also going to shop around and see what else is out there.
And the Chiefs don't have a bye until week 12, so by the time that you're forced to potentially drop one of these guys because of buys or something, if you do have them, we'll have a much better idea. You're going to be closer to 2/3 of the way through the season at that point, whether they'd be worth holding on to at that point or if you can just drop them and forget about them. Gary, do you have something to add on that?
Just plan on playing the waiver wire a lot this year, folks.
Okay.
We've
been doing a lot of that already, certainly.
Yeah. Well, we got bye weeks all the way up to, is it 15, 16?
It's 14, yeah.
Oh, 14. Still, that's a chunk. And then you got to have your shit together for the playoff run if you're going to make it.
Yeah. And, speaking of waiver wire guys, they were already starting one of them in Denver, and it looks like you're probably going to end up starting another one here too. Josie Jewell, who had been a starter, was already out for the year on the inside, and A.J. Johnson is also now going to be out for the year with a torn pec. He had Justin Sternad, who was getting most of the playing time that Jewell had been, and it's sort of a question mark now as to what's going to be happening. One of the early season favorites that lost out on a job for one of those production by default players, Micah Kaiser may be stepping in here, or Baron Browning perhaps if he's healthy and they want to be giving him some time. Is there anything to see in this situation with waiver wire potential guys, James?
Very short, very quick answer. No. I don't like anything here. It's just not my cup of tea. Again, you've got to be looking everywhere this week, and I still don't like it. And going forward, I'm going to like it even less. So I'm just going to pass. I'm going to find something elsewhere. And, if I'm in that 30-team league, then, yeah, maybe I'll have to look this way. But in anything realistic, no, just not.
He didn't make my way. Micah Kaiser or Browning made my work. Stannard, he's failed. He's not. Nobody's on the waiver wire for this week. It's definitely one of those things. Sit back and wait and watch. Now I got to admit, in one deeper league, I had previously owned or drafted Browning and being a Ohio State fan. So, and he had some good news coming out there for a while, but he's out with a concussion right now.
Yep.
But Kaiser, I believe, was also free, and so was Stannard. I didn't put claims in on them, kind of swinging for the fence. This is a keeper league, though.
Well, going into next, one of your topics about a change that isn't an injury change necessarily, but a team sort of who they're favoring type of change, and they talked about the steadiness of one player versus the other. Gary, Patrick Queen, it sounds like, is being moved from that middle position in the Ravens defense, linebacking core for Josh Bynes here. They're going to have Queen go more to the weak side. They had said, head coach Harbaugh had mentioned how the team played better, reacted, and sort of calmed down when they had Bynes there. Is this something you see for this season anyway, is potentially going to be how they're going to proceed with looking to make the playoffs and win the division potentially, or do you think this is just a temporary situation for the two?
Well, I think it's another top option from this year, just down the drain. It's going to be hard to trust. Everything that I seen was, they like Bynes running the defense better than they like having Patrick. They had Clark doing it there for a few years, but Patrick was supposed to take over this year. And normally you would have an inside linebacker doing that, making the plays or calls on the field. I think a lot of it, I imagine they got to let Bynes call the plays. He's setting up the defense, whether he's wearing the green dot or not. And that's just telling that Patrick Queen apparently wasn't getting it quite done. I don't know if they feel like, knocking the dust off Josh Bynes. Are you kidding me? You got Malcolm Harrison sitting there. I think they got to have somebody. But here we got Bynes. Returns to Baltimore. And Bynes might be a legit. I didn't put him on. I like to see what they're going to do again before I ever put him on a waiver wire claim. But, if Bynes is going to get that 70% of the snaps and Queen's going to drop down to that 35%, that's a heck of a hit. That's a heck of a hit. And it sounds like that's where they're going. I got a feeling that it's going to be an aggravating situation. We might actually see, Queen jump up to 50, Bynes go down. So ends up erasing any solid, consistent player that we can pick up from them right now. Makes Chuck Clark that much more valuable off of their defense. But it's tough. It's tough. It's just another domino falling this year. When you look at the name, folks, I don't mean to rattle on. I just was talking to Kraig right before. I seen you smile too when I said I don't mean to rattle on. But I just wanted to look real quick.
I enjoy it, so it doesn't bother me a bit.
And the IDP incentive, which is my flagship league on NFL. Look at these names. Just think of back this past year or any value you had in these top stud players named Cunningham, Murray, Queen, Bush, Scholbert, all of these guys. Now, in my league, it's what I feel is a balanced format for IDP. And when you look at especially the inside linebacker situation, you've you've got Cunningham, Shaq Thompson, you've got Scobert, all those previous names I just answered or just mentioned, they're all outside the top 32, but yet where we had some really late round value, and you have Okaric, you have Walker coming up, you have help me out, fellas. Alexander was 32nd in my league. You got Oakland. He was expected.
Wilson.
Kaiser White, Young. These guys are all in the top 32 with all these other players just fell off the map for whatever reason. And even with like Murray, I mentioned him. I think he was losing momentum before he went on IR. I think he was already losing snaps to Tranquil and Kaiser White. It's a crazy year. And I guess this might be why, we've decided over the last couple of weeks that it's time to, if you're going to win on IDP, you can't get stuck on that value, that ADP, or whatever it is. Wishing it is not going to happen. So while you're wishing, you're going to miss out on some of these players that have got a good consistency. I mean, I got Okaric, and he's just been solid, consistent, never losing you a week. And players like Holcomb, Logan Wilson, these guys were all going so late in drafts. You're just going to have to make a decision, and you're going to have to play the field. You're going to have to decide that just a small consistency from one of these studs that, Devin White's not even in the top 32 in this league. He was the number one inside linebacker off the board last year in most consistencies. So it's crazy. It's crazy. Not to mention, I think that the home stat crews, and I've read it in a couple spots, they're actually rewarding more assisted tackles and less solo tackles than what they used to be. And the way that we've had that set up with how the year's going, I think is making for a really strange year. The numbers are kind of out of whack, but you got to go with it at this far into the season. We're in week 6. We have to roll with what's going to win. But I'm done rattling on.
James, to his point, in redraft leagues with all these buys coming up, is Queen someone you're looking at potentially dropping with this news, or are you trying to hold on to him in sort of a bench spot to see how it plays out?
I mean, rarely, very, very rarely do you get a coach's announcement in the middle of the year, week 6, week 7, where he says, I think we're going to slide this position over. We're going to see what's going on. And I go, the sky's falling in. But with Patrick Queen, I think the sky is falling in. This is horrendous news for his value. It's horrendous news for his short-term value, horrendous news for his long-term value. I believe everything Harbaugh's saying, and I think that Josh Bynes as the one who knocks Queen out of the middle, that's horrendous look for him from what that franchise thinks of him. They didn't bring in Josh Bynes to be a guy, and then they decided to switch him with Queen. Bynes was brought in as a body, and his body's just been better than Queen by that coaching staff's opinion. So whatever you saw on film, whatever I saw on film, whatever anyone saw on film, that's not what the Ravens are seeing in actuality. And I'm done with Queen. This is not something I want to see. I'm going to move on to him, use that roster spot to add somebody with these bye weeks if I need it, add some sort of lottery ticket. But this truly is, to me, a horrible scenario for Queen owners. I had him very high in my dynasty rankings. I had him very high in my redraft rankings, and this is one I'm getting wrong, and probably a lot of other people are getting wrong because this looks bad. This looks very, 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 very bad.
I seen the Bush fall coming. There's no way you could have got it. And Murray, Murray or whatever for the Chargers. Kind of seen his little, but Queen, really? And put some context into what James is trying to get across there. The reason we know that this is not good for Queen is because Baltimore is one of those rare teams where their weak side linebacker, which is where they're moving Queen to, only receives like 35% of the snaps on average per game. All right, so this is what really is zapping Queen right here. because it doesn't matter how well he plays or how good of a talent if he's only on the field for 35% of the snaps on average a game, that limits his opportunities to the point where his ADP you just walked over and flushed it. So, maybe hold on to him for a dynasty. I mean, you can't, if you got him in a dynasty, you got those deep benches, you're definitely not going to let him walk away because Hines is like 45 years old, I think. I don't know, but he's old. So it won't be long, if Quinn can get himself together, because apparently he just can't run the defense. Apparently he's having problems in his showings. They feel the change with Vines lining those guys up. And when you're blitzing 55% of the time, you definitely need to put the right guys in the right spot. Those little motions they do, folks, right before the play or what they're yelling actually means something. So, anyways.
Yeah, Gary's hitting that nail on the head, like I always like to say, because it's exactly that. Who is that old weak side guy? Matthew Judon. We're seeing what he's doing in New England, but what did he do in Baltimore? He wasn't really that effective despite being on an elite defense because, sometimes fantasy and reality don't blend. And even if Patrick Queen becomes, a dominant weak side linebacker for these Ravens, he's not going to become a dominant fantasy force. I agree if you can hold on to him and wait a week and see if all these words ring true, then do it. But in a redraft league, it's not the time to wait and see. I've got my cat coming over here trying to console me right now because I'm devastated at this loss of value. Rarely can you just have someone who you were so high on preseason not lose value like this due to an injury and not lose value like this in the middle of the season. It's kind of unprecedented. I can't remember the last time someone did this, outside of Jaylen Smith. So,
well,
it comes and flows, and this is one of those flows for us.
You can't feel as bad as I won't name certain names, but there was a certain IDP person out there that actually made a video this past off season calling Patrick Queen a breakout candidate. I seen the video. So that's vanilla as hell after the guy already broke out last year, folks. So just imagine how eating crow on Queen after making such a vanilla call has to taste. I mean, that would be tough. I get stuff wrong all the time. I mean, it's the nature of the business. You're paying, I like to believe in odds. And the odds are, you've got to hit quite a few. You're going to miss some, but you hit big, then you're the hero. If not, then you just got to work harder. But Patrick Queen, if that breakout call after a breakout and then he gets benched, man, that's tough. That's tough to swallow.
And the one silver lining is you might be ahead of your league mates right now. You might not realize, or you might realize and your league mates do not realize, that Queen's value is tanking right now. So if you can flip him, you can try and flip him. And if you're in a league where you've got active players who are actively involved in IDP movement, sell him as fast as you can, because otherwise he should be kind of on the waiver wire unless you got deep rosters. It really is the sky is falling. I don't normally like to do this. I like to not be hysterical, but yeah, it's about as red as you can get without some sort of devastating injury. It really is.
All right, we better move on, huh, Kraig?
Yeah, and it's to another guy that we've talked about a lot here. Jaylen Smith, it seems his name comes up each week. He had 17 not really good snaps for the Packers, and then he left with an injury. So it seems, again, like we're asking this every week, but Gary, are you off the train for this year if you have him in redraft leagues?
I actually did a lot of thinking last week. I don't know if from Tuesday to Thursday. I actually, it's time to move on from Smith. I think I actually dropped him from most of my rosters last week where I needed help to pick somebody else up. I don't think that he's going to have any major impact like he's ever had, at least this year. See what they do with Campbell and then next year. But right now, most redrafts, unless it's a deep dynasty stash, I'm letting them walk because I think there's plenty other players that I would rather have working through my IDP. Even in keeper league or dynasty, got to adjust. If you don't adjust, it doesn't matter how much you wish it to happen. It's not going to. So it's might as well get on the bandwagon, and we're going to all have to swallow a lot of pride, a lot of ADP pride, drafting pride down the toilet this year. Oh, and I want to say congratulations to Matt Juden, by the way. The guy deserves it, right? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at him in this league, and he's the 15th overall linebacker scoring in IDP incentive. All right. So, yeah, congratulations, Matt.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful segue, because if you looked at Matt Juden last year, as I kind of mentioned in our last segment on Patrick Queen, he was not someone you wanted to own. He was not someone you were looking forward to owning. You said, hey, maybe he'll land somewhere great in free agency, but today, not worth rostering. I'll wait until tomorrow to see where he is. And now, it's a flip-flop situation with Jaylen Smith. Today, he is not worth owning. He is not worth rostering. Even if you're in a dynasty league, he's on your cutting block, and you should probably get rid of him again unless you have very deep benches. Why? Because however long it takes for him to come back and be a good guy, if that ever happens, is not worth the lost roster spot during your bye weeks. It just frankly isn't. You need to use every position, and sitting on Jaylen Smith is not using every position. Someone else in your league cut Jaylen Smith. Are you going to use your waiver claim to add him? No, you're not. You definitely aren't. Maybe you're a long shot in love with him, and you say, hey, I'll fill out the back end of my bench. I don't need my buys this week. But in all reality, this is a guy on the waiver wire. If he had somebody else's name, we would not be talking about him. We're just trying to talk people off the ledge because his name is his name, and that's great, but it's time to move on. You see over on the Dirty O side, running backs, they crash and burn fast. Looks like that's what's happening to Jalen Smith. Maybe he'll be able to rebound next year, but this year it's a lost cause. Move on.
Before we completely move on, something about Matt Juden that James here had mentioned several times, not specifically about him, but know your league, pay attention to it. In one of the leagues I'm in with Gary through Sleeper, he is defensive line eligible, and you can put Matt Juden on your defensive line. You're getting some nice stats. In the one league that I'm in with Gary, I have him, and it's been a nice little thing. So if you know your league again, sometimes you can find those little edges, even mid-season with waiver wire guys.
Yeah. An edge nobody saw coming. I think we all talked about him and Kyle Van Noy signing back with the Patriots early in the offseason. We was like, that's nice,
Yep, it was one of many bodies, and maybe one of those bodies was going to rise to the top. But frankly, if whoever did, I wouldn't think they're putting up the numbers Judon is. So.
Yeah. Hey, something else, folks. We actually are on our 52nd or 53rd episode for Getting Defensive on YouTube. So thanks for hanging out with us from the get-go. If you've been here, we're rolling. We can't wait to hit that 100 mark. But we've been around for a couple of years, but we really just got on YouTube, and we really appreciate the support. So go like and subscribe for us.
We're gonna switch it up here and talk about a couple of guys. One that's injured now, but both had actually been doing well, as opposed to people that had been disappointing here. Rookie Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah had been playing well in his limited time, but he'd been getting more playing time the past 2 weeks, 85% or above. But he is going to be out on IR for 4 to 6 weeks, they're saying, with an ankle injury. But this is right at the time where Anthony Walker is coming back from being injured. He's been in the 70s for his snaps and having another good week here once he was amped up a little bit. Gary, do you think Walker's the guy that's going to be there in the middle now with that injury news and sort of, Malcolm Smith? You had a good week or two, but then not much. Are you counting on Walker going forward?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it's clearly – it just hadn't happened yet, but there's LB1 written all over Walker probably. I mean, he might not be the highest LB1, but I think he's going to get a nice weekly average in there. It's going to sustain. I think we could – with considering who they have, how can they not afford to play him at least 85% of the snaps every game? He's going to have plenty of opportunity. He might not get you that interception or that pass defended and all those, box score padding type stats, but he's going to get you that base tackle. So He's kind of like, like we're looking at David Long or Okereke. Look at Okereke's numbers. He's just steadily getting the tackles. He's not wowing nobody. There's a lot of players out there doing that this year. They're or not doing that. They're getting the production by base tackles and not throwing a lot of flash on it. And that's killed Devin White. We've talked about Devin White in the past, how it would be hard for him to repeat all those sacks, all those interceptions, and all that stuff that padded the hell out of his box score last year. And of course, even me, I believe I had him third. I had Darius Leonard, I believe, first, maybe Bobby Wagner. But either way, when it comes to Devin White, but to see him drop off this far, I think he's got like one pass defenders. He's only got a couple of those extra padded stats this year, just not even close to the average he was getting last year. They're not having him rush or whatever. He's not getting it, and it's killing people. But he's just right outside the 32, I think. And you can't drop Devin White. It's not Cunningham situation.
Yeah.
And that can flip the switch any point in time too. I mean, the funny thing is here's the top guys. So we got Jaylen Smith, Wagner, then Kendricks. We can expect those. Those aren't that out of the question to be a top three at this point in the season and somebody. But here's four: Perriman, Logan Wilson, Cole Holcomb, Campbell. Then you got TJ. Then Leonard's 9. Harold Landry. Like I said, this is kind of a balanced thing here. Alex Singleton at 11. Jordan Brooks at 12. Kirksey 13. Hicks, Judon, Littleton. This is just crazy. Just look at the lack of the names. That's just nuts in my league. Maybe your league don't look like this, but I'm going to bet it resembles this.
Yeah, I think Gary's, on the right track when he's talking about Devin White, because you look at him and I just think of one thing. Variance is a bitch. Last year, Devin White had some insane variance. And while we were both extremely high on him, we were also saying he had positive variance last year. It's very clear. Yep. Is there a team that, can have positive variance back-to-back years? Yeah, it's probably Tampa Bay. They've got an elite offense. They've got some elite defenders back there. He can keep pulling those turnovers out of his butt. He sure can. But now it's the exact opposite. Sometimes you're really high. Other times you're really low. And I think we'd all agree Devin White's somewhere between these two players. We haven't really seen that statistical output for multiple weeks in a row, but he's that kind of player. He's a very, very, very good player who you cannot drop, but he's not the type of player who he was last year, where he's head and shoulders above the entire crop of linebackers. Similarly, you go back to the Browns, and I think of how variance is a bitch there. Last year, they were very healthy. Very, very healthy. This year, they've been riddled with injuries. And now it's Anthony Walker's time to shine. He already was injured this year, but now he's off IR. And like Gary said, they have no other linebackers there. Yep. Mac Jones, or Mac Wilson, that's not going to cut it. Malcolm Smith, that's not going to cut it. These generic names and generic linebackers, they're not going to be the ones who need to step up and win, because right now that's what the Browns need. And they're going to walk around the field and they're going to let him eat volume today because they need to find some victories. It's a perfect season to go grab Anthony Walker. And like Gary said, he's a future LB1. Maybe he's not a top half LB1, but he's a future LB1 who just sits there and rolls. So if you can go snag him, I absolutely would. Frankly, I'd already have him on my roster, but if he's out there, get him on your roster.
Speaking of guys to possibly go grab, James, Pete Werner's coming off a bye here with the Saints. Prior to the bye, he had 2 really strong weeks where he started getting more playing time, where he had 10 and 13 combined tackles. Is this a guy, or was he a guy that you had already targeted with your waiver wire? And knowing that, his bye was last week and he's going to be coming off here.
Yeah, exactly that. I was targeting last week. I had multiple segments here saying exactly that, to go target guys like this, because that matchup against Seattle, it's not perfect. It's not the greatest matchup you'll ever see on paper. But when you're coming off of a bye, and you get to travel out west early, that's huge. And those Saints players are going to be as ready as they can be. And Pete Werner's going to be as ready as he can be. And if he's anything like he was the past 2 weeks he was on the field, he's going to be a very, very good player. And he's going to be a very, very good player for a long time for your fantasy roster. So get him on my roster if it's not already happened. Maybe you didn't listen to me that last week, and it's okay, and the rest of your league didn't listen either. But he should be rostered. Put him on your team. Let him see what you can do. It's a devastating bye week right now. You can do a lot worse than the guy who's averaging 11.5 tackles the past 2 weeks he was on the field. You can definitely do a lot worse this week. Get him and use your waiver claim on him. Do it. You got to use it on someone. He's a very nice and safe floor option for this week with a very nice and safe long-term option to go with it. You really can't do better on a midseason ad when you're looking at overall output than Pete Werner. You really can't.
Gary, how are you feeling about him going forward here?
Made my waiver wire article. So, yep, agree.
Short and sweet. And we're going to skip ahead here a bit and going to go into some waiver wire type of ads. Gary, without going into too much detail for your subscribers, because we don't want to be giving any corporate secrets away here, but for deeper leagues, when you're looking across the board at linebackers, defensive linemen, defensive backs, are there any sort of names that stick out to you as guys that you want to throw out there to your listeners to maybe target?
Yeah, well, as you know, by playing in those leagues, IDP tipster leagues and such that I have, these are actually the names that you're probably down to in these deeper formats. We start at 11, so these are deep. I really like, and he was a breakout call of mine. He's not broke out like I thought he would, but Brandon Jones, the Miami safety, he has started to finally get most of the snaps over Eric Rowe, and he's actually producing pretty decently with the snaps that he has gotten. That counts, especially this year. Have a lot of players. Some of these linebackers, I believe Bentley, as Roberts, some of them are only getting 60% of the snaps, but they're still producing because when they are on the field, they're put into position to produce. So it's another one of those factors that's kind of odd this year. But Jones is definitely a good play, and I also like Holland. They got a really, really good matchup. I have them marked as solid, but I think that either one of them can end up with a really good, strong contest. When it comes to, let's see, Walker's a no-brainer. Don't forget about Al Shazier or whatever, the 49ers guy. Don't forget about him.
Yep.
He's coming off bye. He has a strong matchup this weekend. And let's see, let's go with a deep DL. How about Mike Dana of Kansas City? I like his matchup this week, too. These would be people that where I need them. If they were free, I would get them for their matchups this week.
James, for more of your sort of standard, 10-12 team, start 2 linebackers, 2 DL, 2 D backs. Do you have any sort of names for people to be targeting in those leagues?
Yeah, I'll hit one of each of those positions. Looking at DL, I'm going by sleeper numbers, so this guy, also qualifies at linebacker. But, give me Marcus Golden. He's going up against that Houston offense that is not good. Davis Mills has shown some promise, but he's also shown some not so good promise. And that Cardinals defense is just tearing it up. And, Marcus Golden just goes in, has a great day, checks in, checks out. And I'm going to bet on him to do it again this week. And, again, it's big-time bye week. So give me a guy who I like his floor. I like Marcus Golden to give me some sort of big play. I like him to get me a few solid tackles. And that's a very nice little floor. Even if you're not playing in a big turnover league, I'll take what I can get with Marcus Golden. Similarly, let's go over to linebacker. One of my favorite players who I hyped up last week, Quincy Williams. I think he's here. I don't think Jared Davis is coming in and just taking all of his snaps. That's not going to happen, in my opinion. Maybe I'll eat my words. Maybe Jared Davis does eventually too. I'm not saying it's impossible, but this week, give me what Quincy Williams is offering. I really like that matchup against New England. Mac Jones is going to be doing some stuff that might be iffy. Damian Harris isn't going to be getting some giant runs. Quincy Williams is going to be there in the middle, ready to get yourself some tackles. Let me buy him. And again, if we're talking sleeper, he qualifies at DB in some leagues. Not exactly sure why, but he does. And if you can plug him in there, that's an amazing bonus. If you can't plug him in there, I'll give you another DB. How about Keith Taylor over in Carolina? Not exactly the kind of guy who I think would be on anyone's radar headed into this season. But once J.C. Horn got hurt, it only took Taylor a few weeks to start seeing 70-plus snaps. And with those 70-plus snaps, he got 10 tackles last week. Is he the world's greatest cornerback? Absolutely not. Is he a very nice fantasy cornerback, especially going up against a Giants team that's probably going to pass a lot and probably could see some nice interceptions his way if things fall the way they may fall? Yeah. So again, we're looking at streamers. I don't like Keith Taylor for a full season, but this week, sign me up.
And sometimes that's all you really need is a guy for a week or two if you're playing these waivers. In a year like this with so many weird names that are near the top and names that you've been counting on near the bottom, you got to pay attention week in, week out to the injuries, who's getting playing time, and adjust. We talked about it a lot last week. This is not the time to sit back and hope and pray. This is the time to take action when you still have season left and you can still turn your season around if you're not doing anything. So please let us know. You can find us all on Twitter. If you'd like to here to ask questions, you can find all of Gary's charts and all that and his recommendations each week towards the end if you're a subscriber over at Gridiron Ratings. James, as we're closing up here, let everyone know where they can find you and any parting words you have for them going into week 7.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's where I mostly trade my craft, so to speak, at WhatMoney3000. And, my parting words are the same thing I've been saying all season. It's look ahead, think differently. Your league, you pretty much know what they do. You've got the guy who maybe makes too many trades. You got the guy who makes too many transactions. And is it a running back heavy league? Everybody's dying to find a running back. The running backs are so thin. Or, maybe we'll talk about the great D and say, maybe linebacker just so thin there because everyone adds linebackers and no one looks at DL or DB. Well, you should probably differentiate. You should probably go and find that value. Dig deep, go and find it. Usually the best way to win when you don't have an elite roster is to do what everyone else isn't doing. You might still lose, but you've got a better shot of winning if you're not just 8th in line. You want to be first in line, even if your line might not be the quickest checkout.
And Gary, any parting words of wisdom?
Go get Jared Davis off the waiver wire.
You're finally getting defensive tonight, going against the Quincy Williams pick.
Yeah, I was trying so hard, James. Yeah, I know. I just I don't expect anything. It'll take a week. So if you get them off the waiver wire right now, it better be a deep format. You have them stashed all over your bench like I do on like 50 teams. I'm kidding. Half my teams. Anyways, all right. Other than that, nope, I ain't got nothing. See y'all Thursday.
Yep, make sure you tune in on Thursday night. You have Dynasty Trip, Gary, and then host with JJ Wenner. That is at 9 Eastern, correct?
Yes.
9 Eastern on Thursdays. So tune into Thursday Night Football and listen to the guys talk about what to prepare for the week ahead. For all of us, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and good luck in week 7.
Bye.